Welcome to Legal Leaders Insights, the podcast where we dive into the legal challenges of innovation with top legal minds. I'm your host, Giulio Coraggio, and technology and data lawyer at the global law firm DLA PIper. And today I'm delighted to have with us Dario Evangelista, Deputy General Counsel at Betsson, one of the main global gambling operators in the world. Dario, welcome to our podcast. I'm really happy to have you here, and I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting episode.
Thank you, Giulio. Thank you. My pleasure.
Dario, in our episodes, we normally start from the career of our guests. Can you just give us a kind of a outline of the main milestones of your career and how you ended up in the iGambling sector that probably for many of our listeners is not the most common area where someone is meant to land?
Yeah, sure. So my career journey, which has spanned the public sector, the private sector, and the gaming industry, has, in any case, greatly shaped my approach to leadership and, in any case, to leading the legal team at Betsson. Let's say that each stage of my career provided me with insights and skills that I draw upon in my current role. Starting with my first experience, I worked in the public administration because I did my legal traineeship in the law office of the municipality of Rome, where I became familiar with, let's say, public administration policies and procedures. Then I moved to the private sector when I joined a law firm in Rome, and obviously there I learned how to operate, let's say, in a fast-paced and client-driven environment. Obviously, the focus on delivering results, negotiating contracts, providing, let's say, strategic advice to clients. In any case, made me, let's say, understand how to think commercially. And obviously, also the exposure that I had, in a law firm to different legal matters, honed my, let's say, ability, when it comes to problem solving, to risk management, and so on. Then I moved, to the iGaming industry, and I joined, let's say, the iGaming industry as an in-house, let's say, lawyer. Obviously, I have been working now for 9 years in the gaming industry. Before Betsson, I used to work for another international operator. And when I joined the gaming industry, obviously, I could combine the public sector and the private sector, let's say, experiences while working, let's say, in a specific industry with its unique, let's say, legal challenges. And as an in-house lawyer, I, in any case, have the possibility to work with, let's say, cross-functional teams to understand how to balance, let's say, legal strategies with business goals. And obviously, the more I grew within, let's say, my role and within, let's say, the gaming industry, the focus naturally shifted to people management. So obviously, I really believe that fostering, let's say, growth-orientated, collaborative, supportive, let's say, environment is the key to driving team success. And I personally, let's say, emphasize in my leadership style, I emphasize, let's say, open communication, let's say, mentorship, and I really think that it's really, really, really important to understand my team, let's say, strengths and also, let's say, challenges in order, let's say, to understand how I can, let's say, provide them with the right resources, let's say, support, and also development opportunities for development. And in summary, so if I need to summarize then my career, I can say that the experiences in the public administration, the experience, let's say, in the private sector in the law firm, and also, let's say, the experience as an in-house, let's say, lawyer in the gaming industry, it kept me with, I would say, a well-rounded, let's say, approach to leadership, because I learned how to balance, as I said, let's say, legal compliance, business needs, team development, while fostering, let's say, an innovation and collaboration within the legal function.
Yeah, something that some listeners might not know in detail is that the iGaming industry is highly regulated. And your career shows how you need to know so many different areas of law to be a gambling lawyer, because gambling operators hold a gambling license, but then there are technology companies, and then process data of a large number of companies, and then they process money on behalf of customers. So even the finance side of the picture is impacted, AML checks and so on. So what is, do you think that a gambling lawyer should what areas of law do you think he should be able to cover? A bit of everything? I mean, it's really a territory that is very broad.
It is extremely broad. And at the same time, speaking about obviously like the game industry is also regulatory fragmented in a way, no? Because first of all, before going, let's say, into details of what like is required from a legal perspective, we need, like in any case, just like to make a distinction between regulated and non-regulated markets. And this is like the first distinction that we need to make when, especially speaking about, let's say, operators that in any case operate at a global level, no?
Sure.
And when it comes, let's say, to non-regulated markets, obviously, like where it's not possible to apply for a local license, either because gambling is not regulated or because there is a monopoly situation in place, like there are also other aspects that need to be taken into consideration in order, let's say, to be aware of certain risks and be able to advise the business, let's say, accordingly. But also, when also speaking about, let's say, regulated markets, sometimes even here, like it is important, like to be able to navigate into like the different, let's say, regulations, because each market is different. It's like each market has its own, let's say, peculiarities when it comes like to the licensing regime. For instance, even like sometimes you can even like encounter markets where there isn't a national, let's say, licensing regime in place, but there are multiple licensing regimes in place. For example, Argentina is an example where there isn't like a national regime, but each province can introduce like its own regulation. And now, obviously, like as you correctly said, then when in any case you are operating, let's say, in a regulated, let's say, environment, there are multiple factors that you need to take into consideration. It's not only about to say, let's take a license, we take a license, then we start operating, no? But there are multiple aspects that we need to handle. So when it can be, let's say, obviously like a responsible gambling, so player protection. There is like anti-money laundering, because obviously like we are legal, I mean, like gambling operators are legal subjects, no? According to, yes, anti-money laundering regulation. So we are, in any case, we need to carry out, let's say, anti-money laundering checks, enhance due diligence, let's say, verifications, and also I said data protection, because obviously like we are also subject to data protection, say, regulation. So we need to like also like to process and share personal data in a regulated manner, like in compliance with like applicable regulation. There are also, let's say, tax aspects that like needs to be taken into consideration, because when you operate in a specific market, there are like there is a tax regime that applies, and you need to comply with that specific, let's say, tax regime. So I would say like there are multiple aspects to be that are relevant, but I thanks like for raising this aspect, because like sometimes like there is the perception, no, from the people that like, okay, gambling, they don't know like probably like what a gambling operator actually does, but it's a proper, let's say, of the like operators are proper, let's say, companies like other companies, like pharma companies, like automotive, like say any other, let's say, industry. So I mean, like operators are composed of professionals from different like backgrounds and, let's say, experiences. There are lawyers, there are like engineers, there are, let's say, people with economic background, psychology, let's say, background, because in any case, we need to take into account different, let's say, aspects. Obviously, the more you grow at a leader, like say at a managerial level, the more you need to be also high level. So like for a person in my role, obviously like
Sure.
I cannot be familiar with any legislation like in the world. But what I learned throughout the past years is like how to, let's say, in any case, manage risks. So like having, let's say, the right, let's say, skills in order, let's say, to understand what really matters in each jurisdiction, in order to be able to take decisions, in order, in any case, to enable the business, but at the same time also protect the business, no? So it's mainly a matter of like having the right approach in order to understand like when sometimes like when we can give like certain interpretations like to specific piece of regulation, and when like we can take some risks in a obviously like in a I would say like in the right manner. So it's mainly about the way you, let's say, support and enable the business, no? What like is expected like from a person like at my level.
No, absolutely, because Betsson is a global business. As you said, there is lots of fragmentation. And I would say probably in the gambling sector, more than in other sector, the so-called unwritten rules are so much because they are just driven by local practices. So you need to know the regulations, you need to know the market, and you need to know how authorities enforce regulations, because you need to make a risk assessment, because obviously the business wants to do something, and the legal team doesn't need to become a blocker. And in a sector where regulations are sometimes not clear, so we're not talking about the countries like Italy or the UK where there is a consolidated legislation. There are countries where the legislation is still in its infancy. Then you need to make your risk assessment. Right. And then do you see your role as part of the business? So you drive the business because you work with the business to make the business decisions, right? It's correct, not just because you're not just like, raising your flag.
No, exactly. And what I want to also like to stress is that if okay, compliance, legal are still, let's say, in a way supporting, say, functions, but if they were born probably like as like in order to support the business, in my opinion, like year by year they have become, let's say, an asset to the business, no? Because as I said, it's not only nowadays like a matter of supporting the business, but also like try to find solutions that are compliant with the applicable laws, but at the same time now can enable the business, can in any case like making sure that we can make sure that like obviously like we can carry out an activity that is still profitable in a specific market. So exactly. So like it's much more than that. Like compliance is like is part now of the decision making process of our like of our group, and that's why like especially like, because not only when it comes to say to maintaining licenses and like support the business when we already operate in a specific market, but in the past years, we in any case we have seen that like many countries started introducing, let's say, a licensing regime. So like in any case, also the entry like in a specific market to a specific market is now in any case like handled by compliance. Now it's compliance in any case that like needs to make sure that the business will be able to operate in that specific market by securing the necessary, let's say, authorizations and licenses. And like I'm speaking about that, sorry, Giulio, because obviously like being at Betsson like at the moment is like operating in over 25 regulated jurisdictions, no? And this like not only because Betsson like is growing, okay, in terms of organic growth, in terms of mergers and acquisitions, but also because many countries that were previously not regulated started introducing a licensing regime. And so in the past, we had to deal with many more licenses applications. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's some people don't really understand that operating in 25 jurisdictions means that operating with 25 legislations that sometimes are totally different one from the other, because even within the European Union there is no consistency at all, because when it comes to gambling legislations, there are obviously general consumer protection legislation, but then the gambling regime is country specific. So it's big of a headache. Dario, we are in a moment where any business wants to innovate, and we're talking about a lot about AI and how to make the digital experience of players, in your case, more fluid, more immersive, more engaging. So how do you combine this need of innovation with a regulatory regime for gambling that, as we said, is very protective and sometimes doesn't keep up, is not able to keep up with innovation, but at the same time, as you said before, you need to combine the needs of business and the needs of complying with local laws, right?
Yes. No, let's say that, like, obviously, we cannot, let's say, avoid the fact that evolving regulation may have a huge impact on, let's say, the possibility, of operators to expand their digital offer. In any case, it's also important to note that, like, some jurisdictions are in any case recognizing also, let's say, the importance of artificial intelligence, not only when it comes, let's say, to business activities, business, let's say, or marketing initiatives, but also, for example, now we're speaking about Italy, like if we in any case, we want to refer to the decree that was like enacted last year, that reorganized, let's say, the online, let's say, gaming system in the Italian market. There is like an article like regarding player protection that actually like imposes like to operators also the use of artificial intelligence in order, let's say, to create, let's say, a safer, let's say, gambling environment. So this was also
for like responsible gambling purposes, to protect, not to abuse players, right?
Yes. And but it's important, like, also to note that, like, also regulate, like, legislators and like public bodies are starting realizing the importance of artificial intelligence. Obviously, like, the problem is that when it comes to investing, like, make investments, on our, let's say, digitalization, on our, let's say, offer. Sometimes, like, you may find restrictions that, like, are going to impact you. Speaking about can be marketing restrictions. Sometimes, like, you make a lot of investments from a digital perspective, from, let's say, from many perspectives, but then, like, you need to face restrictions, like what happened, like, in Italy 7 years ago, like what happened also in Spain some years ago, like what's happening in Argentina, because also in Argentina they are discussing, let's say, in the parliament, let's say, a potential advertising ban. This kind of restrictions, obviously, like, may limit the possibility, like, to promote your offer, may have an impact, obviously, like, on, let's say, the income of, like, of an operators that, like, in any case will have, let's say, less money to invest on, like, its offer. That's why nowadays, like, you need to also combine this kind of restrictions with the need, in any case, to keep developing, like, your product, your technical infrastructure, because obviously, like, the competition is there is a lot of competition, like, so that's why, like, we need to become smarter and smarter, and also, like, we need to be able to optimize our internal resources, but also, like, to choose the right products in order, obviously, to always have a competitive advantage, over, let's say, other operators. And sometimes, like, I'm not speaking about restriction that may have this impact. Sometimes it's not only marketing restriction, can be, let's say, tax restrictions in a market that is already, let's say, quite consolidated, but like, for any reason, let's say, new like tax, let's say, restrictions may be, let's say, imposed. Like recently, for example, I was dealing with like the recent introduction of an additional 1% tax in Peru, the selective consumption tax that entered into force in January, that had like a huge impact obviously like on operators, or the 19% VAT tax that was introduced in Colombia as a part of like a series like of emergency decrees. And this obviously like has an impact. Why? Because not only is is going to increase the cost for operator, but requires also like implementations of your technical infrastructure in order to be able, let's say, also like to introduce this like automatic deduction, no, from player deposits, for example. And obviously, the money that like you could have invested, no, to develop your platform in a different way in order to be more competitive, in order to provide, let's say, a better, let's say, experience, no, to players. Then you need like to use, I mean, such money for in order to comply with like new regulations, like new requirements. So that's like the tricky part, and obviously like evolving regulations continue in any case to have like a huge impact on our like ability to be competitive and like to expand our
I mean, you need to be always, you said smart, you need to be a bit creative and finding solutions, because in-house counsel and legal counsels in general need to find solutions rather than just reading the law and reading the requirements. And the business expects that, otherwise they're going to fight against the in-house legal team. Dario, last question that we address to most of our to our guests. If you had to give one piece of advice to someone that wanted to aspire to a career like yours, what's the most critical skill they should be focusing on developing?
Well, I mean, like you need to have like multiple skills, but I would say that first of all, I cannot, let's say, hide the fact that you need to be committed. You need to be a very hard worker, because in any case there is a lot of pressure. Going back to what I was saying, since we want to be always, let's say, like the first, like in the market, you need to deliver. So like there is a lot of pressure, and like you need to be committed. But also like having the possibility, if you have the possibility like to deal with multiple, let's say, legal matters before even like joining the industry, before even like developing like your career in the game industry, this will give you, let's say, a good base, because you will be able to understand, even if you are not an expert in anti-money laundering, even if you are not an expert in data protection, you will have like a strong, let's say, skills, a strong, let's say, base where you can build, your, let's say, your risk, let's say, management, your problem solving, let's say, skills, and that you will be able then to navigate like the different, let's say, regulations and so on. But then the more you grow, obviously, like it is important, especially if you want to grow at a managerial level, it is important, let's say, the people management, let's say, skills. You need to be able to understand, obviously, like the needs of other people. I think that you need to be a bit of a psychologist, because like when you deal with people, you need to understand not only like how they work, so how they are professionally, but also how they are as a person, because you need to understand, let's say, the way they react, they need to understand, let's say, how they feel, and so on. So I would say that like this is very important, because if you have like if you manage to build a team that really, let's say, supports you, that really, let's say, sees you like as a leader, as an example, then like probably you are on the right path, because in any case, having, let's say, a team that really like believes in what you are creating, what you are building, will in any case of like change completely like the support that you are giving to the business. So like this is like a thing that is really crucial. At least is what like I always try to apply in my personal case.
Absolutely. Super interesting. Dario, I thank you very much for your time. I hope that this episode has helped also people operating in other industries to understand how complex is the gambling sector that should be considered equal as any other sector. It is very, and online gambling probably is even more complicated than land-based gambling because of the different streams of legislations that overlap over time. Thank you very much for your insights. I hope it was useful for our audience, and arrivederci.
Thanks, Giulio. Thanks. It was a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.